Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us for Civic Infrastructure for Aesthetic Justice, What Public Art Makes Possible. We are here to chat today about all of the great things that public art can make happen. And we know that the way that public art can make those great things happen is when it acts as a form of civic infrastructure. Don't worry, we will unpack what that term means throughout the afternoon. We also know that it's able to make great things happen when it's grounded in aesthetic justice. So today we're going to hear from the team from Team Public Art at NEFA about their slate of spatial justice programming. We're going to hear from DS4SI about their aesthetic justice manifesto. You should have received a handout, and if you haven't, you can raise your hand and someone will bring it to you. And we're going to hear from Jason Montgomery at 50 Arrow to learn more about how they're putting aesthetic justice into practice as well. But before we do that, we are going to anchor into the power of public art, which is why we are all here. And we're going to start with a grounding exercise. So you can change slide. Okay. All right. Sorry. So we're going to start by centering ourselves in the space of possibility and transformation. I know this is a grand theater, but I invite you to find a comfortable position, whatever that means for you. You can sit on the floor, you can get cozy in a seat, stand, sit, and close your eyes if that feels good to you. Allow your breath to flow freely and deeply. Take a deep inhale and let your breath fill your entire body. Exhale completely and letting that breath out of your entire system. Again, inhale deeply, exhale completely. And one more time. Inhale deeply, exhale completely. Continue to breathe at your own pace, and as you inhale, I invite you to create space for potential. And as you exhale, release any barriers that stand between you and your highest form of creative expression. Anything that is blocking the most vibrant version of the world you want to exist in. If you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hands. So as you continue to inhale and exhale, breathe into possibility and exhale to release. Use your breath to call in and to clear. Now, imagine a time that felt good in public. And if that's not coming to mind right away, imagine a time that could feel good in public. You can anchor into an experience you've had or one that you crave. Choose your own adventure. Bring yourself to a place where you feel moved, a place where you feel joy, peace, or rest, a place where you can be your whole self. Now look around. What does this place look like? What colors or textures can you observe? What does it sound like? Is there laughter? Is there music? Is it quiet? What does it smell like? Popcorn? Wildflowers? Fresh paint? How does it feel? Warm in the sun? Dewy when you touch grass? How does this place taste? Salty from sweat? Delicious, your neighbor's empanadas? Is there any art around you? What does it look like, or sound like, or feel like to observe? Take another moment to feel how it feels to be here. Soon, we're going to come back to the Zeiterion, back to the summit. But before you come back, take another look around your real or imagined public world. You get to bring any element you want back with you. You get to fill up your backpack with whatever elements you want to keep and share with others. What will will you bring back? Okay, fill up your backpacks. And take one more deep breath into possibility. And exhale completely and release anything that isn't aligned with that vision for the public we all want to experience. And one final inhale deeply and exhale completely. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to this space. Can you slide, please? I promise we're only going to have 2 turn and talks, but there is participation this morning. If you can turn to a neighbor and introduce yourself, describe what you just experienced, and maybe share 1 or 2 things that you brought back with you in your backpack. We're going to take 2 minutes each, and we'll let you know when you're about the halfway mark. Thank you. For folks just joining, you're going to find a neighbor or a friend, and you can join a conversation. Introduce yourself. We're at the 2-minute mark, so if you haven't shared yet, trade off. We're sharing a place we like to be in public and why. More minutes. Okay, get your final thoughts out. Danielle, don't forget our visitors on streaming. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, we're being watched worldwide.
All right, everyone. Finish your last sentences. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope you're able to make a friend. And if you're watching on live stream, I hope you were able to marinade in your public space of choosing. Okay, slide. Now that you've gotten to know one another a little bit, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Danielle Amodeo, she, her pronouns for me. I'm the principal and founder at Arts Equity Group. We work with foundations, nonprofits, and municipalities to help them define, measure, and articulate impact. And most recently, had a great conversation about the impact of NEFA's Public Art for Spatial Justice programming here at the Z yesterday. I'm going to pass it to Jason.
Hauka ola hello, my name is Jason Montgomery. For the visually impaired members of our audience, I am a male presenting indigenous human. I have black hair, glasses, a blue shirt on, and very colorful sneakers on today. I am the founder and director of 50 Arrow Gallery in East Hampton and Attack Bear Press.
Oh, I got one of these too.
Oh yeah, we all got one.
Oh, all right, all right. Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Lobenstine. I'm with the Design Studio for Social Intervention. We did not prototype that name before we named ourselves that, so we call ourselves DS4SI, and we partner with communities, artists, and social justice practitioners to really imagine, demonstrate, and embody the futures that we want. A lot of our work is imagination-based and also thinking about how do we imagine new civic infrastructures.
And I'm Kim Szeto, my pronouns are she, hers, and I'm the Senior Program Director for Public Art at the New England Foundation for the Arts.
Great, slide.
No, I want claps. We introduced ourselves, come on. Thank you, it's very rare.
I'm going to talk about the Aesthetic Justice Manifesto, which I think you all have. And I'm going to maybe start off thinking a little bit about when we were writing this paper, which was the winter of 2023 into 2024. And I talked about it with a colleague, and they said, like, why are you writing about aesthetic justice right now? Like, we should be fighting Israel's brutal attack on Gaza. And, you know, part of me was thinking maybe, as Maya said this morning, there was an association with aesthetics with just decoration, and it didn't seem to meet the moment. But also, you know, legitimate, like, I mean, part of me was also like, oh, the false binaries, right? Like, we do all kinds of things besides fighting brutal attacks in our spare time. But also, I think it's very relevant. We heard a lot for folks who were here yesterday about the moment and how awkwardly we were saying it and how awkwardly we're holding it and what does it mean for our work, especially when it's local work. What does it even mean for our lives and our daily rituals and joy, because it feels really awkward. And so I reflect on that moment when we were writing the Aesthetic Justice Manifesto and remembering that at the end of November of 2023, there was a all too short, literally 4-day-long ceasefire, and Palestinians went to the beach. They went to smell the ocean, to taste the ocean, to feel the water on their bodies, to hear the laughter of their children. And it was so poignant. They had weddings, they played music, right? They had 4 days. And so it reminded me and us of the importance of aesthetic justice, right? Of the right to be moved, the right to beauty, vitality, and meaning. And so I want to bring that to all of us as we continue to figure out this moment and this work and the importance of our work as we do see a rise in fascism and violence around the world. I think that aesthetic justice is not for later, right? It's not for the icing on the cake. It's not after we defeat fascism or after we secure housing for everybody or after we get the schools that our young people deserve. It's for every day. And to say we do this work of aesthetic justice in the face of a particular aesthetic. We live in New England, so we have this white colonial aesthetic. Silence is golden. We have beautiful hillsides and town commons and triple deckers in Somerville and Red Sox Nation and Dunkin' Donuts and like the beautiful cobblestones and fishing boats of New Bedford. We have a particular aesthetic. And it's not an aesthetic that is evenly distributed. It's one of the things about aesthetic injustice, right? It matters who gets to take up public space and doing what. what sounds are condemned, what sounds are condoned, who is remembered and celebrated in public space, who is forgotten or erased. And we're doing this work with people who have been forgotten, erased, experienced genocide, displacement over the centuries, here in New England as well as in other countries that they're coming from. And so I think this work continues to be incredibly important. And I think as we together get to think about these pieces of the Aesthetic Justice Manifesto and what we bring as artists to imagining what's possible and to imagining the civic infrastructures that will welcome all of us and our communities, I'm excited to think with you about it. I'm excited to think with you about it. We heard a little bit about it, you know, folks dancing at farms, folks dancing on basketball courts. I mean, so many things, the ofrenda in Holyoke, the repainting of the Afro-Cobra murals in Springfield by the Commonwealth Mural Team, like so many ways that we're already doing this work. So I'm excited to think with you, and I want to invite you to turn to a neighbor, or if you prefer to think, reflect by yourself, and choose one of these 8 elements of the manifesto that speaks to you. Take a little time to look at it if you haven't, and then share that with your partner. We have about 4 or 5 minutes, so a little time to look at it, and then a couple minutes each to reflect on that element of the manifesto. Good? Awesome. Thank you so much.
I know you're wishing you didn't sit so far away now.
For folks just joining, we've got about a minute left, so rewind down your thoughts. And we're sharing about what is resonating from the Aesthetic Justice Manifesto. And if you're watching online, perhaps spend a couple of extra moments reading that Aesthetic Justice Manifesto. You can find it online at DS4SI. If folks are online and they want to check this out. Yep, you're going to call people back.
Thank you all so much. I'm really curious which ones you chose. We won't get to go into that now, but I'd love to talk to you about it later. I'm gonna hand it off to Kim, who's gonna continue to think about how our work challenges aesthetic injustice, how this is about making our world more our world, as Robert Peters said yesterday, how it's about how the future arrives, as Maya Livermento said even today, and also to get to hear more about the different ways that we're doing this work.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so at NEFA, at the New England Foundation for the Arts, we call ourselves NEFA. At NEFA, we believe that context is important to public art making. And this here is actually a picture of Commonwealth Murals recreation of Nelson Stevens' mural that was painted in the 70s, the work that Lori was just talking about, so I just wanted to name that here. Yeah, so at NEFA, we believe that context is important to public art making. And we say that our public spaces are not blank canvases for art making. Public art can easily be complacent to the aesthetics that dominate our public spaces, and in some ways actually perpetuate the injustices that shape our public spaces. Who is seen, who is celebrated, who's permitted, who's policed, and who isn't in public space. Next slide. And we've been deeply inspired by the work of DS4SI, and I'm putting the slide up there, so if you want to access this spatial justice and public making paper, you can use that QR code right there. And you'll also be able to access the Aesthetic Justice Manifesto and other works by DS4SI on their website. But yeah, we've been deeply informed by the work at DS4SI, and we've actually shaped our public art grant making over the past 5 years to really center the idea of spatial justice. Who has the right to be, thrive, express, and connect in public, and who doesn't? And we acknowledge that the current context of our public spaces do not afford the same rights to everybody to simply be, thrive, express, and connect in public. So these are the core values of our public art program today. That context is important to public art making, that diverse cultural and artistic expressions of Black, Indigenous people of color are essential to more equitable and vibrant public spaces, and that public art has the power to shift public culture and change the future. So a lot of us were in the room here yesterday hearing about the preliminary findings of our impact assessment that Danielle and her team have been leading. And we heard both the possibilities and the limitations that public art has in shifting the our dominant culture today. Next slide. Next slide, yeah. Public art doesn't create spatial justice on its own, but it can be the first pebble that sets the ripple effects, which create the conditions for people and communities to understand, reimagine, and act in ways that create change. Next slide, yeah. Through our impact assessment, we are seeing that when we value diverse artistic expressions in public spaces and center the relationships and the process as much as the end product, artists are able to grow their confidence, their networks, their creative practice. Communities feel seen, valued, and have a stronger sense of agency and pride in place. And when we center the right to simply be, thrive, express, and connect with one another in public spaces, we counter isolation and begin to find agency and collective power to reimagine new possibilities. We're collectively creating conditions for social change. And I like to imagine the possibility of a young person seeing themselves reflected in their community and what impact that has on them as they grow into themselves, as they grow into a sense of self, a sense of pride in place. Perhaps one day they are not just seeing themselves reflected on the walls of their community, but maybe in City Hall, maybe in seats of power that are actually creating change and changing the infrastructure of our places and spaces. Maybe they're changing the way we permit. Maybe they're changing the way we police. And so as we think about the power of public art, we can't trace all of the ripple effects into the future, but we can imagine and hope that maybe one day NEFA won't need to be funding public art for spatial justice, that perhaps we'll be able to just fund public art for thriving communities, thinking of communities and places and spaces where aesthetic injustice isn't the thing that we're talking about. Yeah, and so with that, I'm gonna pass it back this way, and Jason is gonna share a little bit about his work out in Western Mass, and then we're gonna hear another example from Lori.
Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? Good, good. Anyone feeling a little logy after lunch? Yeah, me too. I am Jason Montgomery. I am the founder and director of 50 Arrow Gallery. 50 Arrow Gallery is a 2,000 square foot gallery space located in East Hampton, Massachusetts, dedicated to spatial justice. Specifically, we are a BIPOC-centered gallery space. This is not us, so can we get the next slide? Also not us. I also am the founder of the Holyoke Community Ofrenda. The Holyoke Community Ofrenda is been going on for about 9 years now in the city of Holyoke. It is a three-day public art event that takes place in various locations around the city. Depending on kind of how zesty we're feeling that year, depends on where we put it and what we feel like kind of centering that year. We like to activate pocket parks, public spaces like, well, if you can go back a slide actually, public spaces like, this is behind the Lobenstine building, which is an arts building located in the flats in Holyoke. The ofrenda, for those who don't know, this particular image is from our most recent ofrenda, which happened at the Wisteria Hearst Museum in Holyoke. For those who don't know, the ofrenda is the offering made at the center of the Dia de los Muertos holiday. We started this event about 9 years ago in direct response to some really unfortunate cultural appropriation that was happening in Western Mass. Specifically, there was some Dia de los Muertos celebrations that were really problematic for a variety of reasons. I encourage you to go look for Radio Plasma's podcast about that time period, which discusses kind of what was going on. It was myself, Johan Rashi Vega, and Neftali Duran who came together to start the ofrenda. Specifically, when we began this project 9 years ago, we had limited access to the altar itself to Indigenous and Latino members of our community. We wanted the altar to be a space that was held sacred for those who actually engage in the spiritual practices. It's a complicated holiday for a lot of reasons that I won't go into right now. But as we then began to expand, and we partnered with NEFA, I believe in 2020, we began to expand what the ofrenda is. We decided to open it to the entire public. We started doing this in Laurel Park. It's a pocket park in the Evergreen neighborhood in Holyoke, and I believe it was last year, or no, sorry, the year prior to that, I was sitting at the park and we had just finished setting up the ofrenda. It's a lot of work. It takes about a full day to get everything ready. And this kid rides up on his bicycle real fast and he skirts to a stop and he looks at me and he's like, "Hey, do you like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like this. Why?" And he's like, "We do this every year." And I was looking at the kid and I was like, "I don't know who this we is, fool, because I haven't seen you once. You can carry a single box." But that was the type of ownership that the neighborhood had developed about this project. And the reality is, when we started this project and we first went to the city, we were told that, well, enjoy that because you're going to have it for about 20 minutes before it's broken down and stolen. Like, literally, that was the response we got from the city. And we were like, "You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no clue about this community, and let us show you." And so we put the ofrenda out for 3 days. And at that point, we ended up with more stuff than we started with because the community showed up to honor their loved ones that had passed. And since then, we've progressively gone year to year with that same practice of continually gathering more and more that's left at the altar. Like I said, this is the 9th year we've been doing the ofrenda as a part of Holyoke's kind of landscape. And the funding that was afforded to us by NEFA allowed us to really take that next step from a small community-based practice into a larger citywide practice. Like I said, we also run, and we have no slides of the gallery because I did not send a single slide of the gallery, so it's on me. We also run what's called 50 Arrow Gallery. 50 Arrow Gallery is a free-to-use, BIPOC-centered gallery space. We charge no gallery fees. We accept no commission from any of our artists. We do about 6 shows a year. Those 6 shows come with a materials fee, use of a 750 square foot studio space, and then a 8-week show and the main gallery floor. And part of what we do with that gallery and how we look at it is this is our public art space. This is our public art square. We have a business accelerator program that works with small creative-based businesses, and we give them about 350 square feet of creative space to use on their business. And that is our attempt to have a space that has spatial justice as its core mentality and aesthetic justice as its core mentality. So yeah, I think I'm passing it back to you on that.
So,
yeah.
I'm going to use my own mic this time.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm going to talk a little bit about our In Public Festival, which was what we called a festival of public making, like collectively creating an experience where people were coming together to belong, to feel joy, to create contact zones of different kinds of doing things. We did it in partnership with the NEFA Public Art team. Kim here, Jessica Wong Cami somewhere in the back, Kamaria Carrington if you're online, woo-woo! Also with the Downtown Business Improvement District, who were great partners. Although in this sense of aesthetic justice and injustice, it was interesting because if you go to the next slide, this was a literal civic infrastructure that we were using. Raise your hand if you've been to the downtown crossing steps. Is this a good picture of it? Am I wrong? It looks like that a lot. It was built in part because it was a community benefit from a high rise of folks moving to downtown Boston, like, you know, gentrification happens in all of our neighborhoods. And it turns out they could be napping at any time. There was no drumming allowed. No drumming allowed. There could be napping at any time. So, okay, weird elements of public-private partnerships. But that said, this tends to be an area of commerce and passing through and passing by, and maybe some people stop to have their lunch or read. And we wanted to create a space of aesthetic justice and of belonging. So we created 3 In Public festivals with over 100 artists, probably over 200 across the 3. Maybe next slide. And it felt like a really different space, right? It was sort of in the spirit of we need to create, what's the one? We must produce our own moving experiences. We had artists leading healing events like this one. Next slide. We had the internationally known 1491s, an indigenous comedy troupe, come one night. And when I talk about like contact zones, one of the things that we did intentionally was a beautiful local collective, Unbound Bodies. Go back to the last one still, sorry. Unbound Bodies led an event right before the 1491s came. So you saw all these beautiful black and brown, queer and trans bodies at an event about hair braiding. And then you had the 1491s with communities coming from across New England to hear this great comedy troupe, right? So it was a neat space where you might come from one thing and see something else. Next slide. This was a Black Love event from the last time that we did it. We also, I hope I have, let's see if there's one more. Oh yeah, beautiful. Let's go back now that I know that's there. we did a series of in public events that year, and again, really thinking about how do you create spaces that welcome different people in. Downtown Crossing actually has thousands of people walking by. And one of the things that I've always loved about Downtown Crossing is that it's actually really diverse for Boston, right? Like, we're a neighborhood city, we tend to be pretty isolated and segregated, but you know, as a youth worker, I saw young people down there all the time. It used to have like 4 sneaker stores. Now we're down to a couple. People used to, you know, back in the day, have breakdance battles down there. Young people are still overly policed down there, but there's young people, there's families, there's tourists. And to come downtown to go shopping and then to see a capoeira group or the Black Love event or the drag queen, like, it was also a chance to really help people imagine how a civic infrastructure could be used differently. This slide is when our in public was interrupted by the Delta variant. I know that takes us back. So what we did was we invited all of our artists, or any artists who had been interested in being a part of it, to submit work, whether it was video, painting, still. Unbound Bodies did this beautiful waterway down the steps, and they actually built a little dock at the bottom, so a beautiful space of rest, and we talked about water before. So again, just coming together with artists to think about how do we continue to heal together in that time, even when we couldn't literally be together. Oh, and then we had to end with some of the NEFA crew. Dancing in the streets, right? Like, taking up space, bringing our full selves, hearing music, jump roping. I think I'm really gonna hit that last slide, right? Like, just someone who was downtown shopping with her mom, right? And she had a chance to jump rope. She had an audience, just fully like in her own self, showing off, showing out, having a great time. So again, like, thinking about how do we create these spaces that invite people to see each other, to take up space, to reimagine a civic infrastructure, even one that existed.
Thank you all so much for sharing, for grounding us in what aesthetic justice is, and sharing some really great examples of what it is to activate these principles in practice. Can you share a little bit more about how your work contributes to this opportunity to imagine new civic infrastructure? What does that look like?
Can we go back to the last slide, actually? Just because it's so inspiring. Sorry, go for it, Jason.
No, I love that. I think it becomes both a blessing and a curse, because once you start doing this long enough, you start moving through your cities going, ooh, that would make a nice gallery space, or we could do a performance over there, or that bus stop sure could use activation. I think it changes how you move through your community. And one of the things that I particularly love about this work is seeing how it activates individuals outside of your artistic circle. The pocket park where we do the ofrenda, or where we've done the ofrenda, had been largely unused prior to us coming in and setting that up. And now it's got a brand new fountainhead, it's got a brand new active fountain, it didn't have one before, which was hilarious because we were told don't actually use that space because that broken fountain's really important. So we came in and we literally built the ofrenda on top of it, and then a week and a half later they had a working fountain. Just saying. I personally, I think that, you know, what art allows us to do and what public art allows us to do is suddenly understand that we are not inactive participants in a community that is moving without us. We are active and empowered agents in that community, and there's not a space in which we do not have a right to be active and engaged in. One of the things that I'm looking at right now, and I find it hilarious, I don't know, anyone follow Fiesta Market online? Oh, go home and follow them on TikTok. They're delightful. They've started using their marketplace to do punk rock shows. It's a market in Northridge, and they're doing punk rock shows in this supermarket. And the ability to both, and for those who don't know, it's a largely Latino market. The ability to both have that synthesis of culture happening and having this be a new space for art, I find personally just very exciting. And it reminds me that this work can turn any part of our community into a space that we all are active and engaged in, if that makes sense.
I love that. I was thinking about oftentimes when like city planners come to neighborhoods earnestly, like, what do you want to see in your neighborhood? And there's a lot of challenges for community members to actually be heard and get what they want to see in their neighborhood, but there's also the challenge to imagine new things. So a lot of times what you hear is something that you saw somewhere else, like we want a public library, or we want a skate park, or we want green space. We've really gone hard on what we call productive fictions, actually inviting people to imagine new infrastructures, the public kitchen. Like, what would your neighborhood be like if you had a public kitchen, like a public library? Or what if you had a dance court, like a basketball court? And instead of just asking that question, we work with artists to hold that space. It might be for a weekend, it might be for 10 days, sometimes 3 months. We did a public kitchen for 3 months. And I think our goal is to not only engage people in that possibility, right? Like, once you're there, you're like, well, you should hire my uncle because he's a better chef than you are, or you should have a garden and my grandmother would come and garden. Like, you can start to imagine new things when you're in a new space. You can start to imagine how you would do a dance court better, or you can imagine what infrastructure is missing that would allow you to do a dance court wherever you wanted to. So I think that creating those opportunities to imagine new civic infrastructures, I think, is also really powerful. Creating those opportunities to embody them, to rehearse the futures that we want, and to do it together, I think can really change what feels possible, even in a time where we're feeling a lot of despair and isolation.
And that's one of the reasons that specifically that we started the gallery space, is because we looked around the Western Massachusetts community and we did not see ourselves reflected back in the art spaces that existed, whether they be public municipal spaces or whether they be private spaces. We didn't see ourselves reflected back. And so the need to actually create a piece of infrastructure became paramount to our mission, because we could activate as many spaces as we wanted, but until we had control of the actual space itself, we knew that reflection would only be skin deep.
It makes me think, too, I want to shout out Anolfo Baez, who's here with DS4SI, who runs our design gym. Because we are also missing an infrastructure. We're like, even as we imagine some new infrastructures and engage people with them, how do we create space for people to imagine their own, right? And then to prototype them. So in Upham's Corner in Dorchester, we have a design gym. We're hoping to grow them, because we just thought, like, what would change if every neighborhood had a design gym? What if neighborhoods had a place where someone could just come and be like, I have this awesome idea. You know, one of our neighbors said, I think there should be a sauna, an intergenerational sauna. And we call her Mama Erdine, so she named it Mama Sauna. Like, how do we prototype Mama Sauna? That's going to be awesome. And then what would flow from that? And what if Mama Sauna was next to a dance court? And then what would flow from those two being in relationship to each other?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we run what's called the Business Accelerator. We provide 350 square feet to creative-based businesses, and we cover their overhead costs. So we manage keeping the lights on, keeping the doors open, all that good stuff. We cover the insurance, and then we walk them through the first parts of a creative-based business, because we recognized that there wasn't a launch pad available, and that became a necessary space for businesses to be able to move into the next space of providing more and better art. I mean, sorry, I don't mean bad art. We weren't ever providing bad art.
Bad art can be really good. It's important to create space for bad art sometimes.
I have a bad art bathroom. Like, it's just all bad art.
Lori, I love even the name Design Gym, because it reminds us that imagination is a muscle that we need space to train and grow, right? And you have to be able to lift a 2-pound weight before you can lift a 10-pound weight. And one individual can't lift a ton that I know of. But together, if we're all like pumping the iron of imagination, we can lift big things together. So I love the framing of a gym for that
You're going to love this, because Anolfo just took it further. Now that we have a prototype lab, he's like, you come to the design gym to work out, and then once you've designed your idea, you go to the prototype lab to flex, right? Get it out in public, show what you did. Super fun. But I also want to say one of the things that attract us to the gym as a metaphor was that oftentimes you go to the gym for a particular class or to do your free weights, and then you see someone doing something you haven't seen before, like kettlebells, like what the hell is that? Or like the medicine ball, like what? So there's a sense in a gym which feels a little different. When you are an artist and you're trying to believe in yourself and you're untrained and under-supported and under-grant funded, like you can feel a little brittle. You know, someone says, go to this conference and listen to these people, and you're like, I could do that. But when you go to the gym, sometimes you have a different energy. You're like, I'm gonna go over there and find out what they're doing. And then I'm gonna ask them to spot me or help me, right? So we wanted that kind of hunger of like, you might come to the design gym for one thing, and then be like, what are they talking about over there? Yeah, I'm gonna try that.
We're gonna open up to the audience for questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand and a mic will find its way to you. There's a hand in the back.
I am only accepting stupid questions, by the way. So just.
Thank you so much.
Speaking of the gym, we have a runner.
I don't know if this question is stupid or not, but it is a question, so we'll see if you have an answer. I was wondering, Jason, what exactly you guys did in regards to the ofrendas with the offerings that people made after the fact. I was just curious.
So it depended on what the offering was. If the offering was a photograph, we kept the photographs for the next year. We would give people 72 hours to reclaim whatever photograph or whatever other offering they wanted. What we found more often than not was people was just like, leave it for next year, I'll be back. For some of the other offerings, food, perishable items, they would have to be disposed of. We toyed with the idea of donating perishable items, but then we did 3 days outside with perishable items and we're like, nope. So those are disposed of. But most of the time we give 72 hours to have stuff returned that needs to be returned, and if not, it just goes back on the pot next year.
Any other questions? There's 2 hands.
Hi. My question is, how do you make art resources accessible to those that don't have transportation and are traveling ways and don't have enough resources around them?
Well, one specific answer, we've just started to roll out our design gym online. So a lot of our design tools for folks who are interested in thinking about how do they, you know, design interventions into the moment or imagine new civic infrastructures or other things are now available at designgym.online. And if you use it, we'd love to hear from you because it is a new prototype for us, so thank you.
Yeah, and for us, it depends on who we're talking about. If we're talking about an artist who's doing work in the gallery, then our materials fee usually covers 1/2 of travel. So we'll either cover the expense to get them to the gallery. We cover either shipping one way or shipping return. If that honestly becomes a barrier, we just cover it. I mean, we don't ever want something like transportation or facilitation of the work to be the barrier that keeps someone from in the space. We've been privileged to be able to do that. We've done it in a lot of different ways. There was a great road trip me and my 14-year-old took down to Maryland to deliver a truck full of art to somebody. And at one point he turned to me and he's like, we have over $250,000 worth of paintings in this car right now. And I was like, yeah, let's hit the gas. So you make it work. I think the key to it is specifically understanding and addressing those barriers before you enter into an agreement, because nothing hurts an artist more than entering into an agreement with expectations that don't align. When we're talking about art that we're providing, We try our best to ensure that things align with bus schedules. We're blessed enough at the gallery space that there actually is a public transportation, there's public transit right at the building. So that makes it easy. What I have found is that specifically for our disabled community members, late night events are difficult. So if you're gonna do something that you're targeting at the evening time, maybe think about doing a supplemental show in the afternoon or doing something in the earlier evening to make it a little bit easier for those with mobility issues to attend, because not only are they reliant on PCAs to facilitate actually getting places, personal care attendants, but oftentimes they use the public transportation call and ride, and that only operates in our community till 9 o'clock at night. So being aware and being, you know, willing to address those barriers before they come up.
We also love to travel, so, you know, we could talk.
Yeah.
I'll just add, for our Public Art for Spatial Justice grant or Public Art Learning Fund, our budgets are really flexible. So as a creator, as an artist making work, you can build it into your budget to rent a bus to get people to come to a happening in your community. You can, for our Public Art Learning Fund, we've had folks use it to even pay for childcare so that they can have the flexibility to travel somewhere to attend a learning or something. So having flexible budgets is one thing that we're doing as a funder.
And NEFA Public Art team also has a really expansive definition of what public art is, and Kim can speak more to it, but NEFA defines public art as the public is anywhere that anyone can happen upon, right? So when we're thinking about the place where public art can happen, as we've seen from some of these images, like the bus stop, the place that someone is every day, meeting people where they're at, is the site where public art happens. And I saw another hand. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Michelle. Mics. So my question is around like responsibility and thinking about like the community deserves beautiful things, we deserve nice parks, we deserve all of the things. And also knowing that people on the flip side think about capitalism, you know, take advantage of that. And rent goes up, people get displaced, and we still deserve those beautiful parks, we deserve those beautiful murals, we deserve all of that, right? And so how can we, when we're doing this kind of work in our communities, make sure that we're also addressing the issue of displacement? And like, how are we protecting people in this process? Because obviously you're putting it out in the public, which means it's accessible to anyone. And it's also accessible for anyone to take advantage of, right? And so how are we, people who are doing this work actively, is there any suggestions about like how can we make sure that we are being responsible and being as protective as possible of our community?
I'm so glad you asked this question because we spent about an hour discussing that before the panel started. So you want to start, Kim?
I can start us off. One thing that we're trying to do with our grants is, you know, rather than having our criteria prioritize aesthetic excellence or artistic excellence and feasibility, we're really focusing on the integrity of the relationships that are part of the process. So really thinking about who's involved in the art making, who has ownership of that place and space, thinking about that context. And when we change the way we're making the art and we're not just focusing on that end product, I think that's where we start to see agency being built in community and ownership of place and space. And I think that's what changes the difference between art washing and community really feeling ownership of the art and ownership of place and the power to say, no, actually, we don't want luxury condos. We want affordable condos.
And I was going to say a couple things. Very real issue, and I don't think we're winning, right? Like gentrification is just steamrolling through our cities. At the same time, one of the things that we do quite a bit is partner with activists and activist organizations, including places like DSNI that have a land trust, including places like Dorchester Not for Sale or Luce, right? There are different things that are putting our ability to stay at risk. And so how do we partner with some of those membership-based social justice organizations to continue, not to say that prevents or solves the problem, right? But it puts you in conversations with folks who are also taking on the problem, and it also puts community members who come in conversations with those organizations so they have more resources.
Co-conspirators.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, I believe that displacement happens when ownership is in question. And we try in all of our projects to make sure that ownership is not in question. The Ofrenda being a prime example, it is a project that is created by the community, in the community space, for the community, and whether or not we quote unquote own the landscape around us, we do own our right to be here in this space, and we will occupy this space. On top of that, one of the reasons that we started the gallery was specifically in response to this idea of space being in question. And we decided very intentionally, and if you're not familiar with Western Mass has a segregation issue between the communities of Springfield, Holyoke, and then Northampton, East Hampton, Amherst. I mean, it's a shocking divide when you look at census data, with the Upper Valley, the Northamptons, East Hamptons being like 94% white. And so we intentionally said, we are going to take up a space in East Hampton, Massachusetts, in a very white community, and we are going to maintain control of this space so that, one, our voices are not excluded from this community, and you do know that we do have ownership here. And for two, fuck you, make me leave. Sorry to curse, but make me. Like, make us leave here, and then see what happens when you do. So I think more communities need practice in flexing those muscles, in saying no, enough's enough. And there are things that I have had to do as an artist, and we've had to do as Attack Bear Press, to specifically say we are not going to be involved with organizations that A, are engaged in art washing, and B, that aren't of consistent and collaborative partnership with our community. So.
And who wants to fight with Attack Bear Press?
Yeah, nobody. You don't want to fight with anybody named Attack Bear.
Well, I'll just add, and I know we're at time, so if there are more questions, we're happy to hang out in the lobby and keep chatting. Our last slide has our contact information. You can always feel free to reach out if we can just go to that last slide so folks can snap a picture. I'll say that one of the things that we learned from NEFA's impact assessment was that investing in public art for spatial justice, when you're really building those community relationships, you're creating the enabling conditions for the community to become attack bears, right? Like, when folks are engaged in the sort of violence of survival and the struggle of survival, it can be difficult to have that level of fight. But when public art projects are designed to bring people together and bring a sense of hope and a sense of belonging and inspiration, it builds stronger muscles for imagination, resilience, and resistance. And when public art then is acting as a form of civic infrastructure, that infrastructure is sticky. It keeps people in place, it keeps people rooted, and it can be a part of the solution to those outside forces of capitalism, racism, authoritarianism, fascism, etc. So let's keep doing projects like that. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Kim, for doing this work in your communities and funding it across Massachusetts. And
Yes,
thank you all for coming.
funding it.
Thanks, everyone.